It's the end of September and I'm going to talk today about ficuses because a number of you keep asking me to talk about ficus. Ficus, I wouldn't say is a favorite species because we mainly grow temperate trees and I'm not a great lover of the indoor bonsai. But in the Western Hemisphere and Northern Europe, the ficuses do very well as indoor bonsai. And I have some very large specimens of this. This particular one was sold last week. It's going to the home of someone who has a large house with large glass windows. So this should suffer no problem. In fact, it'll thrive in very bright sunshine. So this is an example of one that I pruned early on in the year. You remember that in March and April, I did some hard pruning where I took the branches back about 8 to 12 inches. That means at least I would say 20 to 30 centimeter back, and I tightened it, and all these are the new shoots that have started to grow. So this is an example of a big one. Let's show you some of the smaller ficuses, and when I say smaller, everything is relative. And the ones that are very popular and which a lot of people buy are these ficuses here. These are nice, cheap and cheerful ficuses in the broom style with very thick trunk. And this is a ficus forest that we made from ordinary ficuses like this that we sell. So if you pan along here, you will see ficuses in all different shapes and sizes. This is the one with the very thick trunk, and we made a landscape with this, and that was literally sold I think within 2 days. So that didn't stay long. We made several of those. So there are some what we call medium-sized ones. These ones are like this, and with the aerial roots, I'm going to try and talk about aerial roots because if you look at these, they have some beautiful aerial roots. And you notice the structure that we have. Now this front greenhouse of ours is where we sell our indoor trees. In the summer it gets nice and warm, but in the winter, because we don't heat this greenhouse, it's very expensive to heat a big greenhouse, so we keep it within this bubble plastic tent, and that usually keeps these ficuses alive. So we've made several landscapes, as you can see. These are the thick trunk ones. So we use them for all sorts of different designs. So we change them. We don't always just sell them as they are. And this particular one, if you remember, I did a video where I changed the front of this tree. This tree was originally, I think, lying this way. This was the front, leaning like that. And then I made this into a normal informal upright tree. Again, look at all these beautiful aerial roots. And now I'm going to take you to the back greenhouse to show you some of the results of the big ones that I pruned. I should mention that these are the new t-shirts that we have produced by a company called Teemill. I'm sure you've ordered it yourselves. And Teemill is an eco-friendly company based in the UK. They do it on our behalf. They're not made by us, they're made by Teemill. And they use our logos and we get a royalty for it. So this is a very nice one that Padma Priya designed. It's all about the impermanence of bonsai. All these wabi-sabi principles are embodied here. And of course, we are Herons bonsai. So let's go into the back greenhouse and I'll talk about some of the big ficuses and I'll show you the projects that we're going to work on. So I should just mention that last week, less than 5 days ago, we had temperatures of 26 degrees centigrade. Today the temperature is about 50, a drop of 11 degrees, so it's getting chilly. If you remember, I pruned it back to the bare wood. It was almost starting from zero. And if you remember, those of you who have got a good memory, I used that little saw and I scored the bark by chopping it, cut like that. I did. And look at all the new shoots that have come as a result of doing that. You see, all from the old wood that has come from simply using the saw to chop. while I'm at this tree, I will just show you something about this tree. Let me talk about it. If you look at it carefully, if you come here, you will see that these leaves from the trunk, this is the rootstock. I think it's like a Benjamina type. I'm not sure. I'm not a ficus expert, so I don't know. So see, from the trunk and from the actual body of the tree, you get this foliage. But you must be wondering why the leaves of the branches are different. It is because these clever people in Taiwan who make these trees, they graft the branches of this species onto the trunk. So these branches have been grafted onto the main body of the tree. And that is how they do most of these trees. So this is this one. Look at the trunk of this. Absolutely massive. I mean, you've got to get rid of these. If you let these grow, they will take over the tree. So it's like suckers. You've got to get short of it and just let the grafted portion grow. So I got rid of that. And that's another one there. That one hasn't come so quickly, but it will come. It will come. You see how they're budding back from really old wood. Again, I chopped it back more than 30 centimeters to get it to bud back tight. And again, you see the trunk. This is the original tree, but we don't want them to grow because the branches are grafted. Another species grafted on that. Now this one is on its own roots, so this is a different species altogether. This one, oh God, someone's broken a pot. But anyway, not to worry. We will regrow this one. We will regrow this one. So we've got lots of trees on the go. And now we will go to the main subject of today's demonstration. Now, as you can see, we've got a treat for you. These are ficuses that I think they come from China, and they've got massive trunks. And because these are mass-produced commercial trees, there is always scope for improving it. So I'm going to show you how we're going to improve all these. Every tree is different. This one is different, that one is different, this one is different. If you look carefully, they're all different. So we're going to have a lot of fun working on these. So we will deal with them one by one, and I will show you the design options, and I will talk about how we deal with each of these trees, because every tree is going to be different. Now this particular tree, this one, I let Tebow work on it. So this is something that he's done himself, and he's put it in these lovely, lovely pots because they look better in these pots. And he's even put a man underneath there, and he's exploited these beautiful aerial roots to the full. Now these trees, by the way, they're not grafted. The branches are not grafted onto it. This is the actual tree itself. So I'm not a great lover of aerial roots. You know, of course, ficus, this is the natural habit of these trees. They always send these tiny roots out. Some people ask, how can I encourage aerial roots? They just happen. There's nothing you can do to encourage it. What you can do is to encourage them to thicken. Like this, if you want it to thicken, you can. Some people, when they see a small root, they put it in a plastic straw. Of course, straws are not encouraged nowadays, but they put it in a plastic straw and they put it into the ground and make it grow. Now these ones are growing in a weird way. I should really take these off because they will strangle the tree. I want them to grow vertically, so these sort of roots should really come out and be put straight in there because it doesn't look nice there. But again, as I say, some people like a lot of aerial roots. So, but for my money, I would like to keep the trunk there. So I can't stand it. I might as well do this because what I feel is that if you hide the beautiful trunk, it's the trunk every time. You know, if you have some beautiful trunks, why hide it? So, okay, I'm letting some of the aerial roots grow there, but I really like to show this part of the trunk. So that has improved it. And put a man here for scale. And a bit of moss to beautify the tree. So nice conical shape. Again, I would have liked this branch to have come down a little more with very hard wire, thick wire. I can bend it down like this to make it look more like this. So this is a further refinement that I can make. So that's that one which my friend Tebow has done. I will now look at some of the other ones. Give you a critique of this one. This one doesn't look like that small tight leaf retusa. I don't know which one this is, but it's got longer leaves, but certainly a very vigorous tree. The way this one has been trained, if you look closely, if you come close, you will see that quite a lot of wire has been used. You can see there's lots of wire there. And because ficus are so vigorous, they are very easy to train with wire. So if you put a piece of wire on a ficus, I think in the cold countries like in the UK, they will take probably a year to set. But if you lived in the tropics, out in India or Malaysia, Indonesia, these trees will probably have their branches set in about 6 months. They're that vigorous. And of course, because they are fast growers, the marks will form on the branches. So I would say don't worry about it, but just keep an eye on it. And once the branches have set in position, make sure you take it off. So I'm going to take them off. See, they have set. They have set, so the job has been done. So I won't show you taking the wire off because that is not something that is worth showing. Now, I've had 1 or 2 people comment on my videos that why do I try to save wire? Why don't you just cut it off? Yes, you can cut it off, but why cut it off when you can do this? You know, they say, why for the sake of saving a bit of wire? I like to save, so let me do it my way. I know you can cut it, but when you can undo it, I don't believe in waste. You've got to be careful. If you leave the wire on, they do leave marks. Now the other thing is, sometimes branches are just tied down with string. Look at this string here. This is clearly a piece of string that they've used to pull a branch down, but they left the plastic string there, and if you leave it too long, it marks the tree. It's made a very ugly mark now. So you've got to take it off in time. So it's made an ugly mark, but that will grow out, so I'm never too worried or obsessed by them. So I'm going to take all the wires off. But before I do that, I will just give it a rough prune. If you look carefully, look at this bit. This has been wired like this to come here. But look at these long shoots there. They have literally grown in the last month. And if you don't keep control of it, you will get those strong branches taking over the whole tree, and your original design could get lost. So always keep a lookout on these vigorous shoots. Vigorous shoots can soon take over, and of course by doing this I'm seeing more easily where the wire is, so that will help me undo the wire. So pruning first and then removing the wire is actually quite sensible. Now I will talk about some of these aerial roots again. I know a lot of people like aerial roots, but they have a function and a use if they are in the right context. If they're not in the right context, now this branch is coming out in the wrong place. It's hiding the front. I didn't mention that this tree has a front and back. Now you look at this one. This tree is very complicated like that, but it's leaning that way. If you look at it from this side, there is always one side that is more handsome than the other side. So this is the front. I should have mentioned it right at the start, that I would use as the front. Let's keep pruning, because usually one does the pruning afterwards, but I'm doing pruning so that I can see where I'm going with. I want to remove those wires. Again, a lot of these rogue shoots. I call them rogue shoots because they're growing in the wrong place. Certainly there will be a lot of cuttings. Ficuses grow very easily from cuttings. Those of you who live in the tropics will know that even if you stick a thick piece of ficus trunk into soil, ordinary mud soil, they will root. They will root in literally a couple of weeks. I remember when I used to go to India, I used to be really surprised at how easily they root. And of course, you get nice trees in virtually no time at all. Now, as I say, all the wires have done their work. In fact, they started to bite. The other practical use of unwiring wires that have been put on the branches is that you learn from the person who has been doing the wiring. As I say, it's not just from wiring, putting wire on that you learn. You can also learn from seeing how the wire has been put on when you unwire a tree. So there is that side to it. Always interesting to see how someone else has done the wiring. So these are commercial trees, so I'm seeing how these commercial bonsai people in China have done this tree. And I will see, we just want some of the very long branches to make it come down. And let me see how he's anchored this. Has he used the 2-branch principle? Not quite. He's hooked it to a root, but it's done the job. So 2-branch principle, not meticulously followed. Now, looking at this tree, this branch has been left here. And again, for my money, there's no right, no wrong. I would like to take it off because this is a very beautiful trunk. And with that in the way, it is hiding the beautiful trunk. So I'm going to take this off. Seems quite drastic, but it's coming off. And although I've spoken so much about making cuttings, cuttings ideally are about thin as a matchstick like that. But with ficus, I know that if I stick that in soil, that is bound to root. So the tropical trees, they root very easily. So I've removed that thick branch, so you can now see all of this trunk. So this is going to heal over, don't worry about that. Now, there are lots of aerial roots. As I say, some people like it, some people don't. If it were my tree, I would not have any aerial roots at all because it is so complicated, it hides the beauty of the tree. And as you can see, look at these thin roots there. These are the roots that become thick eventually. So they will keep producing these roots. And again, I'm not a great lover of aerial roots. Some people do, some don't. I'm one of those that don't. And look at the mess here. This obviously has not been checked and they've just grown. And it can start making the tree look untidy. If you want to rearrange them, you can always pull the aerial root out like this and put it somewhere else like that. You see, you can put it somewhere else. So you don't always have to have it coming out over there. Again, this one is a bit bizarre coming from there and there. As I say, some people like it, but I personally don't. I would like to see the front clear. You see, this is now hiding the beautiful trunk. Again, if it was my tree, I would cut all these off. But because I have to sell a tree, there are different people who think in a different way. Customer may like all these bizarre roots. So although I don't like it, I have to respect other people's taste, and I'm going to leave it because there's more chance of it selling like that. And of course, I always have the view that different people have different tastes. I think it is disrespectful to say, oh, it's not good because I don't like it, so it must be wrong. I think as I've got older, I've come to realize that you can't always be right. There are other people who have different views and they are also right. So this is how I've learned to improve as I go along. So I'm doing two things at the same time. I'm removing the wire and also pruning. And as I said, by pruning, I'm being able to see where the wires are going, I'm learning how this guy has done the wiring. You see, he's made this into a complete, almost like a C shape. Look at that. Look at the bit of wiring he's done. So flexible. C shape there. Very nice. Again, it's not how I would have done it, but it's a different style. And he's just hooked it to the roots. There's no two-branch principle involved there. Now here again, here he's used two-branch principle. You can see clearly this branch and this branch has been wired together. So let's get moving. You notice I'm using the Japanese gin pliers for removing the wires. Very useful tool. And I think the wire they've used for this branch, this is 3mm wire. As I've always said, for most trees, especially trees of this type of size, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5 are the usual sizes of wire that you would need for this type of branch. For some reason they wanted to go up again, maybe to produce some depth at the back. You see that dome shape they've created. So this is the style of this tree. And that branch is going to the back. Okay, fine. It gives some depth and perspective. So this is good as well. So whenever you get a bonsai, whether it's from us or when you buy from any other nursery, don't take it as given that what you have bought is the perfect shape. You can put your own stamp on it by reshaping the tree. So what I'm doing here is really reshaping this tree. Although not in a very drastic way, I'm still reshaping it. See, it is so dense that it's becoming looking like a jungle. It's one thing to have a very healthy tree, but it becomes so dense that you can't see the structure of the tree. Then I think the tree is losing a lot of its beauty and potential. Ficus, I would warn you, they need a really damp living room. I know we grow it in our greenhouses, but in an average living room, it's very difficult to provide the humid conditions that you need for ficuses to thrive. If you live in the tropics, I'm sure a lot of people who watch these videos live in tropical countries, they have a head start. But for those of us who live in these temperate climate, see, like the outside temperature today is 15 degrees. It's quite cold outside. And in the living room it'll be 20 degrees. Ficuses really love to be in temperatures of 25, 30 or more, and with very high humidity. So if you live in these tropical countries, growing ficus is easy. But then they also have the disadvantage of not being able to grow anything else. They can't grow maples and all the lovely temperate climate trees that we can grow. But ficuses, we treat as a novelty because it's not easily available and they don't grow so well in the average Western living room. Again, Okay, he's used 2 branch principle here, which is good. See, I've taken the wires up because the wires have done their job, but should I wish to change the shape, I may need to rewire again. So a bonsai is a living piece of art. It never stands still, and you have to keep working on it all the time. So although I've taken the wires off, at some stage I may have to put some wires back on. That's a rogue shoot there. Let's get rid of it. Rogue shoots are these very strong shoots. Look at cuttings. We've got hundreds of cuttings here. We produce these cuttings because people buy them to use as little starter trees. Now I see here that they've used a piece of wire with no 2 branches, just hooked onto the branch, hooked onto the trunk, and then wired down. Does the job. No, they've anchored it to the trunk in a way. Why can't we leave the wire on the trunk? Yes, you can, but unless you want a really weird, gnarled-looking trunk, I wouldn't do that. Because as some of you know, I leave it on my pines and larches to thicken the trunk, or they'll form that lumpy shape. So it all depends on what you want to achieve. I'm taking rather long to show just one of these trees. I've got another 4 or 5 to go. So I think I've now, no, there's just a few more wires left, so there's quite a few wires to get rid of. You can see another piece of wire here. You see how they do that? They keep doing these curly C shapes. You see? Right down and then swerving out. So with ficus you can do that because they're quite flexible. So what they would do is let these trees grow long branches and then wire them again. So they would cut it back to the main trunk and let new branches grow. And when the new branches have grown, they then select the branches they want and wire those particular branches. So that's the way these are trained. So sometimes when branches get too thick, even while like some of our hardy outdoor trees, like maples and junipers, if you have a thick branch, it will not contrast sufficiently with the trunk, and the trunk won't look so thick. Now there's another 2 branches here which is wired with 1 piece of wire. Let me take it off before it bites. They're all beginning to bite, and as I say, these wires have been on for not more than a year, I would guess. 6 months to a year. We can't grow these from scratch because we haven't got the climate for it. But they do grow, albeit slowly. Lots of wire. Oh God. So although it's the end of the summer now, I would say in a couple of months' time, the ficuses will start shedding the leaves. And many people think that just because we describe the ficus as an evergreen, they think they never shed their leaves. They do shed the leaves. And there are certain ficuses, I remember when I go to India in the winter months, many ficuses shed their leaves completely. So it's a bare tree, like a deciduous tree that you find in the temperate climate. So don't get the notion that all ficuses keep the leaves right through the year. They won't. They will shed some leaves. So the beauty of this tree lies in the very dramatic trunk. I've almost got rid of all the wires, so this is almost a demonstration on unwiring, but as you can see, I'm pruning as I go along. So the other little tip is when you wire a tree, don't just leave the wires straight. You can always do a little zigzag. You can see how these wires have been put on the branch. Can you see how this thing has gone like this, curvy shape? So they're not just wired straight, they're all given a curve. So that's the secret of getting nice looking wiring. One final piece of wiring, again this one, you see this here, they've used thin wire. You see how they've curved it like a C shape, S shape, and again they've only used one wire, which has obviously done the trick. So I've taken all the wires off, and this is the tree. I may change the pot, because if you remember that other pot that we have, I'm going to change all the pots. So when we've pruned all the trees, I'm going to put them in new pots. Now this outline can be improved a little more. So as it grows, keep pruning it back to give you that nice dome shape. See, that little branch at the back gives a lot of depth and perspective. So this is nice. So as I say, it's your choice how you want to grow these aerial roots. And it's got a beautiful twisted trunk there. So this, I would say, is a beautiful design. So when you make a ficus, I think these would have been wired from very young, or they would have found a kinked branch and made the trunk that way. And these would be produced from very thick cuttings. And you see there must have been a very thick branch there. They cut that off to give that bend, to make it bend back on itself. So that's one done, and I'll move on to the other ones one at a time. Thanks.